My wife bought our daughter a horse the day after I lost my job, so I threatened to divorce her. Let me just start off by saying that I love my family and I would do anything to support them, but I've always struggled with anger issues and I've always had issues at work with the whole bosses. I'm not very good at managing my rage when I get pissed off, and I have come close to getting fired previously when I didn't handle conflict well at my place of work. Luckily, I have managed to stay at my last job for almost 7 years, but we recently had gotten a new boss in our department and he was a total dickhead. He was so condescending and didn't really understand anything about the department he was running, and eventually I just lost my patience with him. He had gotten mad at me for missing a deadline for an important client and started berating me in front of the whole office. That's when I had enough and I got up and started yelling back to him in front of everyone. My boss doubled down and we started screaming back and forth until I was eventually holding him by his collar and yelling at the top of my lungs. Now I understand that I lost my cool that day, but I've been managing my anger very well up until that point. If that man had never been hired by my company, this would have never happened. Unfortunately, I ended up being let go after that incident. I was extremely stressed out when I had to come home and tell my wife I had lost my job. My wife and I have been together for about 15 years and it's not the first time she's seen me let go from a job because I flew off the handle on accident. We have a 16-year-old daughter together and she's an excellent, well-behaved kid. She is on the lacrosse team at her school and a brilliant student who I'm so proud of. About a year ago, one of her friends invited her to her barn and she rode a horse for the first time and fell in love with it. She started volunteering at her friend's barn and she and my wife started saving up to buy my daughter a horse when I was still employed. I was supportive of their plan and I always wanted to see my daughter happy. But as my daughter continued to talk about the barn and horse care, I started to realize that this was going to be an expensive endeavor. Before I lost my job, I knew we could handle the expenses of owning a horse since my daughter is our only child and we have a lot of extra income. After all of our bills are paid, my wife and daughter had finished putting the money together for the horse my daughter wanted. Around the same time, I started having problems with my new boss. My wife and daughter had started looking at horses and falling in love with one in particular. They started arranging the sale with the horse's original owner and set up a date to bring her to a local barn where she would live under my daughter's care. I have never seen my daughter so happy and excited about anything, but I assumed that after I lost my job that my family would understand the new financial situation we would be in. I just thought that it would be clear as day that there was no way we could afford the horse after I just lost my job. I assumed they knew that they would have to cancel the sale as soon as possible after I lost my job. Apparently the sale was almost final and the horse's travel arrangements were already in motion the week that I lost my job, but I still found it absolutely infuriating and ridiculous when I asked my wife if she had canceled the sale yet, and she said that they were still going through with it. I'll be honest when I say that I immediately started screaming at my wife, asking her how she could be such an idiot. I told her that my daughter was only a kid, so maybe she wasn't understanding, but my wife should have assumed that we wouldn't be able to take care of the horse. After losing my income, my wife reminded me that the sale was already taking place before I lost my job and that my daughter had a part-time job herself and would be contributing to the majority of the horse's expenses. My wife also insisted she could pick up an extra day at her own job if we really found ourselves struggling and that everything would be fine. I kept insisting to my wife that we didn't need this new burden over our heads and that she needed to find some way to get rid of this animal because we could not afford it. My wife started to get very upset and she said that she wouldn't take this away from our daughter just because I was a grown man who couldn't manage my emotions in any professional environment. This only made me more enraged and I yelled at my wife for disrespecting me while I was already dealing with so much stress. I told her that if she ever spoke to me that way again, then I would leave her and she would be responsible for destroying our entire family. My wife ended the conversation after this and took my daughter out for dinner for a couple hours. When they got home, neither spoke to me and my wife has been ignoring me since the day and sleeping on the couch. I have enough on my mind without her bullshit and I'm just going to wait until she comes to her senses and speaks to me again. I have already made a post on Craigslist selling the new horse and I'm not budging when it comes to getting rid of it. I think most people would agree with me when I say that there's no way I should be expected to pay for this thing while I look for a new job.